Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Micaela and today I'm here to do one of these talky video bloggy type things regarding naturalization or becoming a Japanese citizen. This video is actually inspired by a comment on my last video where I was talking about how I'd been in Japan for 10 years and a comment asked me if I was considering naturalization. And quite frankly, I'm not. So before I start, I kind of want to remind you to not take my word as like everybody's opinion, because I think that Japanese people and foreigners alike, everyone kind of has different feelings about this subject. So what I am about to say is entirely my opinion and you can take it with a grain of salt if it doesn't suit you. I think a lot of foreigners who first come to Japan come here with the dream that they are going to work hard and successfully integrate into the culture that they have chosen to adopt. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. It's just a very, very hard thing to do, especially in a country like Japan. The reason we have these ideals in the first place is because we come from countries with international backgrounds. For example, I was born in Richmond, British Columbia, and if any of you live in Vancouver or even in BC, you will know Richmond is over 50% of the population identifies as Chinese. It's actually the most international city in all of Canada, with over 60% of residents being immigrants. I grew up in an ethnically diverse country. And for me, as a child growing up, the only way that I could properly distinguish visitors from actual Canadian residents was their accent and the way that they spoke English. If they had an accent, oh, they must be from outside of Canada. If they spoke English just like me, oh, they were probably born here, they're Canadian. It wasn't really that difficult, you know? And because of that, it's not too crazy to assume that, you know, if they can blend in Canada, why can't I blend in Japan? However, Japan doesn't exactly have the same history with immigrants and internationalization. Japan itself was a closed off and isolated country until the mid-1850s, which is really, in terms of Japanese history, is quite recent. And although a ethnically non-Japanese person can apply for citizenship here in Japan, the general perception of what defines a Japanese person is not what passport you hold. It's all about your blood and your lineage and where you come from, your heritage, pretty much. This is why Japanese citizens who were born with foreign parents, otherwise known as hafu, or, you know, half Japanese citizens, have a hard time being considered fully Japanese as well, even if they've lived their whole life in Japan, even if they have a Japanese passport and are considered a Japanese citizen, even if the only language they know is Japanese. If they have that foreign lineage, they end up being considered in a separate category from pure Japanese people. And of course, not everyone thinks this way, but there is like this general consensus that like pure Japanese are like 100% Japanese, and then there's the hafu, and then there's the gaijin, and it's like it's all like that consciousness is like always there. Basically, having a Japanese passport, having all the paperwork that says you're Japanese, isn't what makes you Japanese. What makes you Japanese is your heritage, ultimately. So having said that, I think naturalizing or choosing to apply to become a Japanese citizen is totally a personal choice, and there are people who, in spite of all this, still think that, you know, maybe they have a good reason to do so, but for me, this is the thing. I look Canadian. There's nothing about this that could even indicate that I would ever be Japanese. You look at me and you can tell that I was born somewhere else to parents who were also born somewhere else, and that is a fact that I cannot change. No matter how long I live here, what kind of jobs I do, what credentials I have, or how much I can speak Japanese, I will always be judged first and foremost by my appearance. And that is just a fact. That is, after 10 years, you just, there's nothing you can do about it. It's weird. It does feel strange, because consider it this way. I don't look at myself every day. Like when I'm outside, when I'm going places, when I'm at the bank, or when I'm in a restaurant, or I'm on the train, or I'm going somewhere, I don't have this consciousness of what I look like to other people. You know how like dolphins, they communicate with like echolocation. They have these like sonar waves. They're like, peer, and then the things come back and they're like, oh, now I see. I feel like in a way I'm like a dolphin. Stay with me. I feel like I'm a dolphin in the way where it's like I go out there and I do things, and then judging by the reaction that comes back at me, the things that I say and the things that are said back at me, that's how I kind of developed this consciousness of who I am in relation to everyone else. My identity as a Canadian has been only made stronger by the way that people react when I'm outside this house, basically. The fact is, having a Japanese passport or doing all the paperwork that technically makes you Japanese will never change the perception of the people around you. They'll never be like, oh, well, now that you're Japanese, I see you differently. It's not gonna happen. So, what's the point? It's taken me so long to understand this, but it's normal in Canada to be multiculturally diverse. That's just, you know, that's the way that we Westerners were raised. But are we really entitled to walk into a different country and decide what's normal and what isn't? Maybe there are people out there who want to naturalize because they think that it's going to prove a point like, hey, non-Japanese heritage people can become Japanese citizens too. But is that even really what's best for Japan? I'm not saying Japan hates foreigners. No, they love tourists. They love tourists. They love having people come and enjoy Japan as it is. But they don't need people coming here and changing Japan, and that's what they're afraid of. You know, Japan's dedication to preserving traditional ways, that, you know, makes it such a unique and wonderful country. And that's what makes people come from all over the world to visit it. It's not, you know, oh, well, they should make it easier for us to live because we're different and we came in and this is how we want it. I feel like we can't just say that I am Canadian and I'm really, really okay with that, because I think rather than trying to get Japanese people to accept me as a Japanese person, I would rather that they learn to accept me as a Canadian. You know, for all that is, you know, I grew up somewhere else. I have parents that were not born here. But I sure as hell worked hard to learn and study and be able to speak and communicate, and it is what it is. And it's also worth noting that Japan doesn't allow dual citizenship, meaning that becoming a Japanese citizen would mean not being a Canadian citizen, and for me, that doesn't make sense. I love living overseas, I love living abroad, and being in Japan has granted me so many amazing opportunities that I'm thankful for, but at the end of the day, if I can't go home to the country that feels normal, that accepts me, and that treats me like everybody else, you know, if I can't have that comfort, I don't know, what else, like, what do I have? Besides, in the meantime, for people who want to stay in Japan long term, there are visa options for that. Visa options that allow you to live in Japan for a long time, pay taxes just like a regular Japanese citizen, and do all those things without having to relinquish your own identity or citizenship and marry yourself to a new country. I feel like the end game isn't being accepted as one of them. It's like having them accept you for who you are and recognize that you're trying really hard. That would be like the happier ending, in my opinion. Sorry that this is so boring, but yeah, I kind of wanted to like answer that and get my feelings out there and kind of start a conversation, because I think that there are tons of different opinions and I'm prepared to read them all in the comments. So yeah, go ahead, write below how you feel. Do you think it's worth giving up your own citizenship to become a member of a different country, even if it means that, you know, you're not really even a member or treated like a member of the other country? Thank you very much for listening. I also want to thank you for being really, really nice to Tatsu, because I like him a lot, and it really means a lot to me that you guys also like him a lot. And I think I would like to have him also make a video and kind of talk about his experiences, because he was not born in Japan either, and although he is technically a Japanese citizen, and he has kind of an interesting perspective on it as well. But that's, of course, you know, when he's ready to talk about it, or if you even want him to talk about it. Yeah. I will talk to you soon. Thank you.